She can write articles.
Yes.
As Effie Boyle.
Yes.
Get them published in the paper.
Yeah.
And nobody's like, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Effie's writing has really suffered this last month. Hey, Internets. It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about The Nevers. Season 1, Episode 5. Hanged. They play a game of hangman the whole time. It's really suspenseful. We open with a montage showing the state of affairs in London. I think it's been about a month since the previous episode. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the case.
I mean, it seems logical.
We see that Lavinia and the scientist, I forgot his name, but the evil scientist guy that she works with, are close to freeing the glowing orb from underground, which we are later told is called a Galanthi, or it contains the Galanthi, but we'll call it the Galanthi. Malady has been convicted in a court of law, sentenced to a public hanging, and Amalia and Dr. Cousins are having a lot of sex, apparently. Yes. So that's our montage. Yeah. That's how things are opening. We end with a usual suspect style reveal where Inspector Mundy figures out Malady wasn't actually hanged. She was impersonating Effie Boyle, the journalist whom she had murdered. And she'd been doing so for weeks. And so, big reveal. Malady's still alive. Before we launch into anything else, good sir, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I enjoyed it for the most part, even though I believe that there were either some strange COVID-related problems in production, or they decided to make some weird, strange choice that hasn't explained itself yet.
Well, they did mention that in the little post-show comments that the pandemic had played a role in even like the execution scene and stuff. So yeah, obviously whatever they had in mind got a little derailed by the pandemic. Much like we just finished talking about that with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So
yes,
these projects that were taking place in 2020 had to do some quick thinking, and this is one of them.
Yeah. You, sir? What did you think?
What did I think? I enjoyed the episode. I did. Just as a little microcosm, it put our group, made them a moral choice, and we saw it carried out, and it was a pretty effective little whodunit thing where I didn't see the turn necessarily coming, the twist. I was a little suspicious. We'll talk about it, but I didn't see like, oh, that's Malady. So that was interesting. The fact that the Penance's group didn't just succeed, like they did their whole thing, and then it was like, oh yeah, by the way, Malady didn't care, the whole time. So that was a fun little twist on that too. So yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. I would say that I did mention this show could afford to slow down a little bit. It did not take my advice. I don't know. I'm not listening to the show
in the future.
I spent half the episode thinking, why does everyone in this show suddenly know what a Galanthi is? But that's that month. They shared all that info. Everybody was up on it except us. But yeah. So I was like, did I miss something? Did they mention it at some point?
I suspected that like they'd mentioned it before. I'd be told by other people watching the show, reading other people's comments that no, this is new. Good.
Nope, new thing.
All right.
New thing.
Thank you for sparing me to have to go through the whole show before.
So I did. I knew the Galanthi sounded familiar, and sure enough, there is a reference to a Galanthus
in the Bible.
In the Bible. No, well, Greek mythology. The Bible. Okay. Galanthus was a servant woman to Hercules' mom. Hercules' mom is pregnant with Hercules. Hera doesn't want Hercules to be born, and Galanthus thwarts Hera's efforts. Hence, Hercules gets born, but as punishment, Galanthus gets turned into a weasel.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if maybe this is a connection in that this group of folks, whoever these are
weasels?
Are weasels. No, they defied some kind of a godlike.
Okay.
And so were punished, and the punishment somehow came about in what they're living through now. I don't know. Anyway, maybe not, but
like Australia.
We wondered last episode, our last recap, what Malady's turn is, what her powers are.
Yes.
And a couple of keen-eyed commenters.
Yeah. Now we're thinking
Deborah
that it's behaving like she's sane.
Right. We'll talk about that too. But yeah, the ability to not be crazy. But a couple of cool commenters, Deborah and Sci-Fi Psycho, mentioned that
Speaking of crazy.
Episode. Speaking of crazy, maybe it was Malady writing to us in the comments. Yeah. Mentioned that Malady could gain power from pain.
Oh, yes.
That's mentioned here in this episode too. So
it is mentioned, yeah.
Which I guess means that she, if you inflict pain upon her, she maybe absorbs that, like some kind of kinetic energy that she can dish out back. Like
they tried to establish some sort of difference between pain and harm, which is like, what?
Right. They were like, well, doesn't she get power from pain? So when she gets hanged, they're like, well, she doesn't. Not if she's damaged. Okay, yeah, it's a little odd. She still hasn't really fully demonstrated what that is, but we know now that it has something to do with, because she's, I guess, spent a lifetime, or at least her adulthood, having pain inflicted on her. And so it seems somewhat fitting that she can harness that pain and do something with it. So, you mentioned it. She pretended to be sane for several weeks. Yeah. So we know that she killed Effie Boyle, the journalist, weeks earlier. There's that picture, the black and white picture in Monday's office. She notes it. It's like, oh, that's that woman I killed and I'm impersonating right now. Doesn't say that, but she says like, oh, I wear that coat. I mean, she was basically giving little clues to Monday the whole time. She was Kaiser Soze-ing big time.
Yeah.
And so,
how many
she's
more clues they could have? The inspector should have been drinking out of a coffee cup,
right.
and dropped.
Right. Oh! Let me look at these flyers behind me, and wait a minute. She's not as crazy, I guess, as I thought she was. Right? What we had been led to believe, at least I had.
Yeah.
In the first
I was led to believe it too.
She was bonkers.
Yes. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. What we see is she is a more contained form of insane, I guess, that she can mimic, sane people to the extent that she can write articles.
Yes.
As Effie Boyle, get them published in the paper.
Yeah.
And nobody's like, well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Effie's writing has really suffered this last month. No, they're like, oh, that's Effie, all right. Yeah, that's Effie for you.
See, there's her power.
Yeah, but which I thought maybe might be the case, but the fact is she has to wear a disguise, right? She has to wear a fake nose,
right? Although it's possible that she, has a whole different set of people that are having to write articles, or she's got like
I see,
a team full of monkeys or something that are
the article writing minion.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I think I was right on, I think his name is the Colonel, but her minion, she has a minion who's the Purple Man. I mean, that dude's powers are insane.
Yes.
That guy could be ruling the city.
Yeah.
Honestly, he just says something to somebody and they believe it.
Yep.
And they'll go do crazy stuff because he told them to.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. You're right.
Keep that guy on the payroll for sure.
Yeah.
He's like, at some point he might be thinking like, wait, why am I working for you again?
Yeah. Well, she is crazy, so she probably would be like, you can't fool me.
Oh, that's true. Maybe it's like, right, she's like, I'm a Tidarian. Your Jedi powers cannot work on me. So the big kind of moral conundrum of the episode is, hey, do we go get the Galanthi? Or do we rescue Malady from this public hanging? And so the group splits into two.
Yes.
You've got Amalia's group is Amalia and the doctor. I guess that maybe that's part of the reason we saw them having sex, was that it was like, that's why he's on her side. I don't know, but he's on her side.
I mean, I feel like even if they hadn't had sex, he might have taken her side. He's been the caution, person expressing caution throughout the show. I think a number of the people that you could classify as realists on that side.
Right, Bonfire's there, and then Augie Bidlow as well, and okay, I can see that. Speaking of Augie, though, so his part in their plan, which I assume we're going to see the attempt to get the Galanthi next week, right? We see the after effects. They show up, they're back at the orphanage, and they look really dirty and bloodied. They look sad, but they're like, it kind of worked or whatever. So I think we'll see what happened, what transpired there. But his part in the plan is supposedly to summon a bunch of birds to distract so they can do the drilling. And it reminded me of this. I once read through this directory of like Golden Age superheroes, which had some hilarious powers and names. But one of the ones I remember the most is a mentalist, a hypnotist named Hip Knox. And one of the things that Hip Knox does in the comics is he's got a rocket. I think he's in the rocket, and it's going to crash, and he's going to die. It's like, oh my God, how do I save myself? I know. I'll hypnotize just a ton of condors to come and cushion the blow of the rocket. So like he basically makes condors go extinct to save himself in the rocket. Like I'm picturing Augie doing that. Like, Anyway, die birds. But anyway, Hip Knox.
On the two different missions, though, actually, I was reminded of an old Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode called The Zeppo, wherein the character of Xander is focused on when there's a big problem and they're trying to foil it. Buffy and the rest of the crew are trying to stop this thing, and Xander has his own little adventure. So we follow him. And so at the very end, they're all like, phew, that was tough.
Oh, I see. But we don't see that, in other words.
Well, there were a few points where people were like having like, oh, how could you do this for me, and whatever, and then it's like, what do you want, Xander? It's like, well, I was having a problem, but, well, all right, I'll take care of it myself.
That's funny. I was thinking this last week. I didn't mention it, but it did occur to me. Last week's episode, we had Amalia spares Lucy, right? Lucy's a spy. Amalia's considering strongly killing her, but in the end she's like, you know what, I'm not going to kill you, just you're exiled. It reminded me a lot of Firefly. There's the bit where Mal is going to kill Jane because he betrayed the group, and then in the end he's like, all right, fine, I'm not going to kill you, but you get the feeling he might. Oh crap. So there's a similar little Joss Whedon little tie in there. Are you Team Amalia or Team Penance? You're in that courtyard. They're giving their cases.
Yeah, Amalia. I'm a realist, man.
I'm Team Amalia too. Yeah. I understand Penance's thought pattern, but the show doesn't make it, I think, that attractive to go to the Penance side for a couple of reasons. One, it's not really in dispute that Malady is a serial killer. I mean, nobody's like, look, she was unfairly accused and it's terrible. Like, in other words, if Penance had been picked off the street and they were just like, she's one of the touched, look, we'll call her a murderer, and then then you'd be like, oh crap, we got to save her. Sure. In this case, you're like, oh no, she's a serial killer. Okay. So there's that. Then there's the fact that capital punishment is not outlawed in Victorian England at that time. Sure. Public executions is the little hang up here. So they're not saying, like, you and I mentioned this before we were recording, but like, if Malady was going to be executed in private, would this plan still be going off? Or is it the fact that it's like, no, they're making it public to make a statement about the touched, that's why we're doing this? That's where I would be like, well, I'd rather them not publicly execute someone, But if it's a serial killer, and then all I'm saying is please close the door when you execute her, I'm like, I think I'll go do the Galanthi thing instead. But I don't know your thoughts on that or not. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. As we discussed before, she's a pacifist. They made a point of that throughout. And I think that's one of the main things she's about, even though, as you talked about, it's not like she was consumed with this problem before.
Right, not like she was like, capital punishment is wrong no matter who's being killed.
Right, but in this situation, though, I think the bigger issue is they're putting it all together with the registration that's occurring. And the yellow stars they have to. No, I'm sorry. Actually, with the blue ribbons they have to wear.
Correct.
And these little auditions or whatever, like tryouts or whatever they have to do.
When you go to register, you have to show your power.
Yeah.
They're definitely being persecuted. That's true.
So I think they're trying to set her up as someone who is trying to strike back. So the fact that she feels like it's, this is really directed at them, part of the war that they're experiencing is, a reason why.
Well, it's just, because somebody, I think it's Harriet, does the line where she's like, look, she's being executed because she's touched. And
yes,
my point would be, if I'm in that courtyard, I'd be like, well, okay, she's being executed because she's a serial killer. She's being executed publicly because she's a touched. So the distinction there is, I think, a big one. But anyway, so we see the whole setup, the hanging's about to happen. We see, was it Masson is like doing all the little, let's make sure this thing goes off. I want snipers, and we got to fence people. We don't want a huge crowd in here. We want a crowd, but not a huge crowd. So we'll let 400 people in. And I guess in the interim, in that month, Nimble, the guy who can do the little force discs, has joined the team, and so he enables this plan to go off. There's a bit of a riot that happens. In the riot, Harriet gets trampled. She's the one that can create glass.
Yes.
Out of any object, I guess, with her breath. And so there's a wall or a door that won't open, so she turns it to glass, and then the crowd breaks it down, and she's going to get trampled. Yes. And she is saved by Effie / Malady, which is an interesting little moment there, and I wonder if that portends maybe a shift in how we perceive Malady going forward. It occurred to me that maybe a narrative purpose for this, because in some ways the whole rescue attempt is pointless. Malady doesn't want to be rescued, and they don't end up rescuing the.
Well, she doesn't need to be rescued.
Right. So that in and of itself, it doesn't really do much. But perhaps Malady sees that Amalia's group, the orphanage, really put a lot on the line, their lives or their freedom on the line to try to rescue her. And so maybe we see in that moment when she saves Harriet from being trampled further, maybe she's like, hey, maybe I should be on the side of these folks who are putting themselves out for me. Maybe. I don't know. If she's not crazy.
If they're setting up like the contrast between the path of resistance, right? And so, the classic path that people express is sort of like the Martin Luther King side and the Malcolm X side, right?
Okay.
And you might strictly think of
Magneto, Professor X.
Yes, right, exactly. So you might strictly think of Malady as a Magneto or Malcolm X type, and maybe Penance as the Martin Luther King savior type, right? And Amalia in the middle. And Malady has expressed doubt, and I think just about everybody else has too, about Amalia's true motivations. One thing they've talked about, or at least I've seen talked about people watching the show, is that it does seem like Penance might know more about Amalia's situation than the audience currently does.
I think she definitely does. I
Right.
think that's true.
Right. So as we learn more about Amalia's situation, Penance won't be saying, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" Which
Right.
they still could. There still could be some facts that Penance doesn't know. But but why is Malady so suspicious of Amalia? So is that going to become more stark as this
the next half of
half
the
season finale coming up, or something in the rest of the season?
That's a good point. We don't know the origin of Malady and Amalia's friction.
Yeah.
But I feel like at least part of it is, I think they were institutionalized at the same time, and Amalia didn't side with Malady in order to gain her own freedom in some way. And I think so. Amalia got out. Malady had to stay.
Now here's the thing to square, right? Because if the disagreement comes before the event that caused them to be touched,
you're right.
Right? Then how do we interpret these things that Amalia has been saying about I'm not in this time or this?
Yeah, I feel like the easiest answer would be that Malady and Amalia met after the events had. So the event happens, Amalia becomes someone else. People think she's crazy, put her in an institution. She meets Malady, they have an out. But it does feel like they have an older relationship than that.
Yes, it does.
That it's more than 3 years.
Right,
it feels like it's older.
Because one thing we saw, right, is when that event was occurring, where everybody was being touched, was she was already being put away or being,
right.
by people who were, she's crazy or whatever. So It doesn't seem like what should have happened after Amalia, after she tried to kill herself and then became touched, and then they put me into an asylum.
You're right. The origin story to their relationship is still nebulous, but it does feel like it's older. It predates the event, or in the fact that the personalities they have taken in perhaps are older than that.
Yeah, I think that I could believe that. I could believe that Malady has come in the future where she had a relationship with Amalia, and now that they're here. But it'd be interesting though, right? Because is merely Malady's thing just sort of causing trouble and like, okay, I don't want you to do what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
But,
she says she has a mission, so yeah.
Yeah. They keep showing us, especially in the preview for every episode, is Amalia doesn't know what the fuck she's supposed to be doing.
That's right. Well, here's another hint, another clue that she's from the future. Again, which I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't know that I want that. But is when Penance is showing her this an X-ray of the city or whatever. She's like, oh, it's an X-ray. And, Penance is like, no, it's a spectacle or something like that. And, if you remember, when Penance created the device that was going to let Mary Brighton's voice be heard, Amalia goes, oh, you made an amplifier. And Pence's like, no, I don't call it an amplifier. But the idea being that these are devices that Amalia has seen and knows what they are, like in the future. Like, oh, that's an X-ray. Oh,
yes. Yeah. She does that a lot.
And so it's either that's like a little ha-ha joke, or they're trying to say, yeah, she's seen these. She's seen X-rays because she's from the
I think
future.
you're right. Yeah. It was more pronounced in this one. I realized her whole trying to rename things funny. That's a nice bit. I like it.
Yeah. And so one of the odd things, and I'm going to guess maybe this was, as we saw, they talked about the pandemic affecting the scene, especially the scene of the execution.
Right.
They were originally going to have it in this big, open, cool-looking area in London or somewhere. Anyway, they ended up having to create a set.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't have so many people in a crowd in space, and so they had to adjust. One of the scenes that maybe it pays off in the next episode, but it certainly didn't pay off in this episode. And that's this thing where they're like, okay, and we get everything done and we get her out. Then I want you to pull the lever, and when you pull the lever, then the thing. And so they don't pull the lever. Like, don't pull the lever. and they're done. They finish their thing, and then the lever accidentally gets moved.
Yeah,
You see it kind of go chink. And then what looks like the beginning of maybe like a hot air balloon or something. Something is like starting to inflate.
Yeah.
But we don't see it.
No.
And they never come back to it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what was the point in you showing this thing? I think there was a scene that that got cut.
Well,
I think
it could have been, I guess, but you could just interpret it as, wow, once she died, then everything happened that was supposed to happen after that, it just should spiral out of control.
Right, but then we didn't see it spiral, I guess. That's the thing.
Well, I mean, the fact that, this balloon, we didn't actually see it rise or whatever. Maybe they couldn't do that, or they just figured, why spend the money to have that happen? Just to,
But in that case, though, I would say just cut that whole bit then. Just cut the whole lever falling. If you're not going to show the result of, oh crap, now we've got our getaway vehicle is floating over the city or whatever it was. Anyway, it's just it was an odd non-event.
Sure,
where you show the beginning of it, but didn't show even they didn't talk about it, like, oh, we lost the car or whatever.
Right.
I did not see the twist coming.
Yeah,
I will say that the closest I got was in the scene where Malady, as Effie, is looking at the photograph of Effie's murder and talking to Mundy. Because at the time I was like, why are they? This is a really long scene where Effie is being a cop, and I'm like, what? Unless they're going to turn her into a detective, like. This is something's very important about this moment. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And it was later, I was like, that's why it was important. Okay. Because it just was like, it felt so out of place in it of itself. But then it made much more sense when it's like, it was Malady teasing Mundy the whole time.
Yes.
All along. The person who Malady had die for her was Clara. I didn't remember that, frankly, so I had to kind of go back and through the notes. I'm like, okay. There was the woman who was missing some toes, who wanted to be, in Malady's entourage, and so I guess just agreed to dress up as her and then go and hit Mundy so she'd get arrested, and and she kept up the act the whole time. She played crazy the same time that Malady was playing sane.
Yes.
The whole time. So. So good job. No one figured it out until after it was over.
Yes.
And so also interesting that Malady reveals herself so quickly, right? It shows her intent.
Right.
If her intent was just to get away with it and everybody thinks she's dead, then you think she'd just keep hiding. But she's not. So I think her intent is to say, I am immortal. You cannot kill Malady. So it'll be interesting to see the result of that. In the next episode, which apparently is going to be bonkers. The actress who plays Amalia says, a whole lot of stuff gets revealed in episode 6, and everything the thought you had coming in episode 6 diverts in episode 6.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think we're gonna be in for
I wonder if we're
info.
gonna see some of the results of Lavinia and Edmund Haig's exposure.
Right. We get the strong hint that she's been radiated. She's got headaches. This thing is pulsing. We do see also moving objects in there. So maybe the Galanthi, there was these little shadows that were moving inside.
Yeah, I mean they made a big point when Lavinia was saying it looks like it's going to hatch, and and Haig is like, not hatch, no. It's I don't know. I guess he thinks that they're pupae or something. I don't know.
But it is pulsing.
Yeah.
It's active. And so the implication is that it's given them some kind of radiation. And there's this thought, we see this played out a few times in that conversation with Lavinia, and also I think Masson mentioned something about electricity.
Oh yeah.
It's making everybody immoral. But the idea that technology is literally poisoning, people's bodies. That it's
that's interesting.
And so
they also showed too that one person they bothered to really do a big story for, who was working in a store until they discovered that she was touched, and then she had to run away, and they caught her. Right? They showed that she still has access to her powers, because it really made it
or
seem
that they
like
come back. She
right. Yes.
with the orb glowing, maybe it's given her power back.
Yeah. All right, because I wasn't sure exactly what they were saying. It's sort of like she seemed to have free will and her powers until that, and then she's just walking around like a zombie. But maybe it was making her whole. And one thing they're talked about too, in a number of places, right? Not just Amalia and that doctor's love scene, where it's like, oh, maybe this thing is going to heal us. And I think what they were trying to say, what the doctor was trying to say actually is like, we can be healed from this situation. But she interpreted it a different way, like, oh, heal us of our sins. But, that's one of the things that I think some people are hoping for, is perhaps, to have the results of what Amalia and the rest of them are doing is to help them in some way.
Right. Yeah, Penance even mentions, like, that's the way they could save Malady. Like, hey, do you think, is it possible? And she's like, nah.
Yeah.
You're really quick to dismiss that. Is what she said.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds, the way she's making it sound like, not only do I have, if I didn't have to do this thing to get this, the MacGuffin, maybe I'd be pulling the trigger to kill Malady.
So a thought I had, maybe, I'll throw out a little long shot theory, but you've got this touched woman down in the mines near the glowing orb who can levitate stuff.
Yes.
I'm going to guess that when we see the gang trying to get the orb to safety, she's going to, like, her power might come in useful in that moment.
Maybe.
To levitate the orb, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway. But yeah, what do we think on Lavinia then? What is the progress here for her? What does the radiation do? Does it just...
I'm not sure, I'm not trying to set up some sort of, like, she's like a Hitler, where she... has become some part of the touch, but she's working against the touched. And it's an interesting thing because she's, as far as Amalia is concerned, she's helping the touched, but obviously she has sinister motivations. Yeah, one thing that would confuse me is the people who are sort of like, you must do something about the touched, and then they become touched. It's like, what's going on? Is that the danger? Like the whole city becomes touched? If that's the case, then, that'll show, Mr. Crazy Masson there. Oh, yeah, you're touched too. I mean,
Right, and don't forget, I still think his daughter is locked away in his basement. But yeah, so I think maybe we're on the track that Lavinia is going to get powers. And maybe even magnified powers because she was so close to this orb.
And ironically, still crippled, perhaps.
Right, maybe. She's the new Professor X. But yeah, so yeah, I think that might be the trajectory we're on there. Is that this radiation is going to give her some kind of a power that she's going to deal with in a. Maybe she'll be morally conflicted about it, or I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. I wonder, though, if it would be something that she'll be more afflicted than anyone else, where it's like, now I have to hide, because you would think there'd be some moral consequence for everything she had done.
Oh, I see. Like, cause we've already seen, like, there was the woman with the ears, like the animal ears.
And one of the people has spikes on them,
Spikes on his arms.
Yeah.
Maybe she's got, like, a full body transformation that she has to, like, vanish from society.
Yeah.
She, which would be interesting because she is the appearances for her is a big deal. It's like, this is my place in society.
Yeah.
Okay. That's I'm on board. We're throwing that theory out there. Okay. Lavinia turns into a giant bat. So anyway, we'll be back talking about episode 6. Which is a kind of a mid-season end, basically. And it promises to have a lot of answers or more questions for us, but change is going to happen in episode 6. So looking forward to seeing what happens there. Thank you as always, Paul. Appreciate it, good sir.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back talking about episode 6. Bye, everybody.
Bye.